I still remember the way she smiled when she said it. Too easy. Too casual. My sister stood in my living room, suitcase by the door, keys already in her hand, and said, "I'm taking him to Miami, just for a few days. The trip will be so much fun." She spoke like it was already decided, like I was only there to nod. I hesitated, of course. Any parent would. But she was family. She was his aunt. She had watched him grow up, had held him as a baby, had promised a baby then once that she would always protect him if anything ever happened to me. I told myself I was being paranoid. I kissed my son goodbye, told him to listen to his aunt, and watched them drive away, not knowing that was the moment everything started to unravel. The first day was quiet. Too quiet, but I convinced myself that Miami was to drown out phone calls. The second day, still nothing. No pictures. No quick text. When I finally called, my sister laughed and said they were busy at the beach, that my son was having the time of his life. I could hear music in the background, people talking, glasses clinking. It sounded normal. It sounded safe. So I ignored the tight feeling in my chest and told myself to trust her. That night, I barely slept. Parents know this feeling, the kind of rest where your body is still, but your mind is pacing. At exactly 2 a.m., my phone rang. The sound sliced through the darkness, sharp and unforgiving. Unknown number. For a moment, I stared at the screen, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it was knocking against my ribs, trying to warn me before my brain caught up. I answered. My son was crying. Not whining. Not upset. Crying in a way that only pure fear produces. He whispered my name like he was afraid someone would hear him. He told me he was in a hotel room alone. He said his aunt had left with some friends. He said he didn't know where he was, only that it was dark and he was scared. Then the line went dead. I don't remember putting on my clothes. I don't remember grabbing my keys. I remember the feeling, though. A cold, focused panic that erased everything else. I called back again and again. No answer. I called my sister. Straight to voicemail. I called the hotel he mentioned, praying he had remembered the name correctly. The front desk confirmed he was there. They confirmed my sister had checked him in. And then came the sentence that still echoes in my head. Your sister left the premises hours ago. I was on the next flight to Miami. Sitting in that airplane seat felt like torture. Knowing every minute in the air was another minute my son was alone. Another minute wasn't there to protect him. I replayed every memory I had of my sister, searching for signs I had ignored, the jokes that went a little too far, the bitterness she hid behind humor, the way she talked about freedom, about starting over, about how children shouldn't tie people down. I realized then how carefully I had edited my image of her to keep my trust intact. When I reached the hotel, my son ran into my arms like he was escaping a burning building. He was shaking. He told me everything. How she had promised ice cream and fireworks, then left him alone because it was old enough. How she told him not to call me because I would ruin everything. How he waited hours before finding the courage to dial my number while hiding in the bathroom, afraid someone would walk in. My sister showed up the next morning, acting confused, offended, even angry that I was there. She said I was overreacting. She said it was only a few hours. She said she needed a break. But her words fell apart under the weight of what she had done. There was no apology that could fill that space. No explanation that could undo the fear in my son's eyes. That phone call at 2 a.m. didn't just wake me up. It tore away my illusions. It taught me that love without responsibility is dangerous, that trust without boundaries is reckless, and that family titles don't guarantee safety. I took my son home, and I made a promise, to him and to myself, that I would never again ignore my instincts just to keep the peace. Because sometimes, the most terrifying moments don't come with warning signs or villains you don't know. Sometimes they come with a smile, a suitcase, and the words, "The trip will be so much fun." When my sister offered to take my son to Miami, it sounded harmless, even generous. She framed it as a gift, an opportunity for him to see the ocean, to laugh, to collect memories instead of sitting at home glued to screens. Family is supposed to be safe, and that belief runs deep, almost automatic. We are taught from childhood that blood means protection, that shared history equals shared values. I wanted to believe that. I needed to believe that. So when a small voice in my head whispered that something felt rushed, that her excitement felt more like urgency, I silenced it. I told myself I was projecting my own fears. I reminded myself that she was his aunt, not a stranger. That reassurance was powerful enough to override caution. Trust, especially within family, has a strange way of lowering defenses we would never drop for anyone else. If a friend had suggested a sudden trip without clear plans, I would have asked questions. If a neighbor had done it, I would have said no immediately. But because it was my sister, I assumed good intents without demanding clarity. I didn't ask for hotel details right away. I didn't insist on daily check-ins. I didn't set rules because I didn't want to seem controlling or ungrateful. In that moment, maintaining harmony felt more important than asserting boundaries, and that was my mistake. There is also the quiet pressure of guilt that comes with family decisions. Saying no can feel like an accusation, as if you're implying the other person is untrustworthy. I didn't want to damage our relationship. I didn't want to reopen old tensions that never fully healed. So I chose politeness over protection, peace over preparedness. I convinced myself that nothing bad would happen simply because it shouldn't. That assumption was fragile, but I treated it like fact. What I didn't fully understand then was that intention and behavior are not the same thing. Someone can claim love and still act carelessly. Someone can mean well in their own mind while causing real harm. My sister spoke about fun, freedom, and bonding, but she never spoke about responsibility. Looking back, that absence was loud. The warning signs weren't dramatic, they were subtle. The lack of details, the impatience when I hesitated, the way she dismissed my concerns with jokes. Those moments mattered more than I realized. Trust should never mean blind surrender. It should be supported by accountability, communication, and respect for parental authority. I gave trust without structure, and that left space for poor decisions. When you hand over what matters most in your life, especially a child, love alone is not enough. There must be limits, expectations, and the courage to enforce them, even when it's uncomfortable. That experience forced me to confront a painful truth. Being family does not automatically make someone safe, reliable, or mature enough to carry responsibility. Love does not cancel out recklessness. Familiarity does not replace vigilance. I learned that protecting a child sometimes requires disappointing adults, questioning motives, and trusting your instincts, even when doing so feels impolite or harsh. Ignoring that inner warning doesn't make you kind, it makes you vulnerable. The phone call didn't start with screaming or chaos. It started with silence, the kind that presses against your ears before the sound even arrives. When my phone rang at 2 a.m., my body reacted before my mind did. My heart jumped, my breath shortened, and every instinct told me that this call did not belong to the ordinary world. Nothing good ever arrives at that hour. I stared at the screen for a second too long, as if delaying the answer could delay whatever reality was waiting on the other side. When I heard my son's voice, it was small and broken, stripped of the excitement he'd carried just days before. Children don't know how to hide fear. It leaks through every word. He didn't speak in full sentences. He whispered, paused, whispered again. He kept asking if I was really there, as if even the sound of my voice might disappear. That was the moment I knew something was wrong in a way that couldn't be fixed with reassurance. Fear like that doesn't come from boredom or a bad dream. It comes from feeling abandoned. He told me pieces, not a story. He said he was alone. He said the room was dark. He said his aunt had gone out and told him to sleep. Each fragment hit harder than a full explanation could have. My mind tried to assemble logic, to create a version of events that wasn't terrifying, but the gaps refused to close. When the call ended suddenly, the silence afterward was unbearable. It felt louder than his crying, heavier than the night itself. That single call erased every comfortable lie I had told myself. Days of casual texts and forced optimism collapsed into a single, undeniable truth: I was not in control, and my child was vulnerable. The realization was brutal. As parents, we like to believe that distance doesn't weaken protection, that love can somehow travel faster than danger. That call proved otherwise. In that moment, love needed action, not reassurance. Panic tried to take over. But panic is useless unless it turns into movement. I called back again and again, listening to unanswered rings that felt like accusations. I dialed my sister's number, hoping for an explanation that would make sense of everything. But her silence spoke louder than any excuse. Every second without answers sharpened my fear into clarity. I stopped hoping and started planning. That phone call didn't just reveal a situation, it revealed a shift. Before it, I was a trusting sibling, a hopeful parent. After it, I was something else entirely, focused, alert, stripped of hesitation. Fear has a way of cutting through denial with surgical precision. It forces you to see what you've been avoiding and act on what you've been postponing. In the darkness of that early morning, with my phone still warm in my hand, I understood something fundamental: truths don't always arrive gently. Sometimes they wake you up, shake you, and demand a response before you're ready. And once you hear them, you can never go back to the comfort of not knowing. Fear changes the way you think. It strips away hesitation and replaces it with a sharp, almost painful clarity. The moment I realized my son was truly alone, miles away, every other concern vanished. Sleep, comfort, pride, even fear itself became irrelevant compared to the single objective of reaching him. I moved on instinct, not logic, because logic would have slowed me down with questions that didn't matter anymore. There was only action. I booked the first available flight without caring about the cost or the inconvenience. Money suddenly meant nothing. Time meant everything. Sitting in the airport felt unbearable, like being trapped in a place where the world continued normally while mine had fractured. Every announcement over the loudspeaker sounded distant, unreal. I kept replaying his voice in my head, the way it cracked, the way he tried to be brave while asking if I was coming. That promise became fuel. I would get to him. Nothing else mattered. On the plane, surrounded by strangers who laughed, slept, and watched movies, I felt completely isolated. None of them knew that my chest felt too tight to breathe properly, that every minute in the air felt stolen. I stared out the window, imagining worst-case scenarios. I couldn't stop. Fear doesn't ask permission before it floods your mind. It invades, uninvited, filling every quiet space with images you don't want to see. I fought it by focusing on steps, land, get a car, reach the hotel, find my son. Breaking the panic into tasks was the only way to survive it. When I arrived in Miami, the heat hit me like a wall, but I barely noticed. I went straight to the hotel, my hands shaking as I spoke to the front desk. Saying my son's name out loud felt like a plea. When they confirmed he was there, and admitted that my sister had left hours earlier, something inside me hardened. The fear shifted into resolve. There was no room left for excuses, understanding, or family loyalty, only protection. Seeing my son again was both relief and heartbreak. He ran to me with a force that told me how close he had been to breaking. His small arms clung to me like I might disappear if he loosened his grip. In that moment, I felt the full weight of my responsibility. Not just to love him, but to guard him from situations where love alone wasn't enough. That experience changed me permanently. It taught me that when it comes to a child's safety, hesitation is dangerous. Waiting, doubting, or hoping things will resolve themselves can cost more than you're willing to pay. Fear, when acknowledged and directed, becomes a tool. It pushes you beyond comfort and into action, demanding courage you didn't know you had. Confronting my sister the next morning was nothing like the dramatic arguments you see in movies. There was no shouting at first, no explosive confession. It was quieter than that, and somehow more disturbing. She walked in acting tired, almost annoyed, as if the real inconvenience was being questioned at all. She smiled like nothing had happened, like leaving a child alone in a strange city was a minor detail that didn't deserve attention. That calmness unsettled me more than anger would have. When I asked where she had been, her answers were casual and careless. She said she needed a break. She said she trusted the hotel. She said my son was old enough to handle himself for a few hours. Each sentence revealed a mindset that terrified me. She wasn't cruel in her own eyes, she was entitled. She believed her needs outweighed her responsibility. She believed that because nothing bad had happened, nothing bad had been done. That logic exposed a deep disconnect between intention and consequence. What hurt most was not just her behavior, but her refusal to acknowledge the fear she had caused. She minimized it, brushed it aside, suggested I was dramatic, controlling, overly emotional. Those words cut deeper than apologies could have healed, because they showed a complete lack of accountability. Instead of seeing a frightened child, she saw an inconvenience. Instead of seeing a broken trust, she saw an overreaction. In that moment, something irreversible happened. The image I had carried of my sister collapsed. I realized that familiarity had blinded me. I had confused shared memories with shared values. Blood had given me comfort, but it had also given me false confidence. I understood then that trust is not inherited. It is earned and maintained through consistent, responsible behavior. Protecting my son meant making choices that would permanently change our family dynamic. It meant setting boundaries that would not be negotiable. It meant accepting that closeness sometimes has to be sacrificed for safety. That realization was painful, but clarity often is. Love does not require unlimited access. Family does not mean unlimited forgiveness. Walking away from that confrontation, I felt a strange mix of grief and strength. Grief for the relationship I thought we had, and strength from the certainty of what I had to do next. My priority was no longer keeping peace or avoiding conflict. It was creating a world where my child never again felt abandoned or afraid because an adult chose convenience over care. That experience taught me a truth I carry with me every day. Protecting a child sometimes means being misunderstood, criticized, or even resented. But the cost of silence, denial, or misplaced loyalty is far greater. Some lessons come gently. Others come through fear, confrontation, and loss. This one came through all three, and it changed the way I define trust forever.